Hello, and welcome to Eloqua Office Hours, where we discuss everything Eloqua and marketing automation each month. As a quick note, today's session is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to the replay via email tomorrow. And at the end of today's presentation, we have two special offers to share with you, so stick around, you won't want to miss those. I'm Al Arceo, Account Director at Forethought Marketing, and I'll be your host today. Richard Holder, Director of Marketing at Forethought, will present today, and Richard has been with 4TM for 6 years. Prior to that, he worked for Visa as Director of Marketing Operations. If you have any questions, and we hope that you do, please use the Q&A feature so that we can keep everything organized. And with that introduction, let me turn the time over to Richard, who will kick off today's presentation.
All right, thank you, Al, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Today's office hours will be just a little different because we're going to explore a creative integration approach using Clay, n8n, and Eloqua. I've chosen to use Clay because it's what we use here at Forethought Marketing and for data enrichment. And while today's presentation is not an endorsement, it is an example of the kind of creativity that we've come to expect from Eloqua users. Additionally, I'm going to use n8n to automate fetching some files from Eloqua to overcome a current limitation of Clay. When it wants to download files with multiple rows in it, it just does not have that support yet via an API, so we'll be doing that. So Clay does not offer a native Eloqua integration, but that doesn't mean we can't create very effective enrichment workflows. As any Eloqua user knows, sometimes the best solutions come from creatively combining existing tools. This requires getting technical and seeing possibilities where others see limitations. There are many other enrichment solutions available that work seamlessly with Eloqua. David York from SureShot spoke at one of our office hour sessions about the importance of data enrichment. And for those that don't know, David's company SureShot builds data quality and enrichment solutions for marketing automation platforms like Eloqua. If you're not familiar with Clay, let me give you a quick overview. First, it's an aggregator that offers over 100 data sources and supports what I think is the most important feature for us, waterfall evaluation, meaning that you can configure Clay to check data sources sequentially until it finds what you need. So if one source doesn't have it, it will move on to the next one and so on until it's exhausted all the resources. Second, Clay offers an easy-to-use HTTP API and webhooks, which for us who are more technical and like to build things, we can connect it to systems like Eloqua, even without a native connector. And this matters because there's no single data provider that has 100% coverage. One data provider might excel at technographics, but miss international contacts. And we see that with very specialized providers inside of Clay that are unique to Asia Pacific or Europe or North America, or they have them split out so that these different data sets you can target your enrichments. We really like Clay's waterfall approach, and that's why we're using it. So with this background, let me introduce two use cases that we're going to use for the sample today. So here are two use cases. The first one is contact enrichment, and these examples here are drawn from actual enrichment use cases that we've used with customers. So we want to streamline a form and reduce friction by using enrichment. And we also want to do account enrichment so that we make sure that our account information has more than just what we might have collected or input ourselves, but we can increase the segmentation and other capabilities by adding new information. So let's start with contact enrichment. Oops, need to switch the wrong button. Sorry about that. All right, so you know this is being done live because there was my first small mistake. All right, so here we have a simplified campaign canvas that has what you would typically see in an event registration or something similar, where you're capturing a lead. So we have the information coming in from the form. We have a filter here, which I'll describe in just a second. And for today's demo, I've included a contact record that's already flowed through this, and we're going to take a look at it. So this is Mark Lavelle. This is the CEO here at Forethought Marketing, and we're going to enrich his contact information live. And you see here, we don't have his LinkedIn ID and we don't have his title. So we're going to make sure that we add those on the fly, just like if we would have done it in real. So I'm going to move that over here to the webhook action. Now, the webhook action on the canvas is very simple to configure. You just select something that you've previously configured. If you've never done one of these before, it's almost like an update rule where you have to create the rule first and then you can use it on your canvas. So just remember that. All right, so let me jump over and show you exactly how this particular webhook has been created. So here you see the webhook, the app interface, and I'm going to go into the setup. And this is the overall webhook integration panel. And we're going to look at the first one, which is Enrich Contact with Clay. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click Edit. And so in this configuration, we're going to send it as a post. This is outbound, obviously, because we're pushing from Eloqua into another system. Here's a webhook URL that I got out of Clay and configured it here. So I've set up my Clay first as the target. And then we will be adding headers and then some raw JSON. Now, don't worry if you're not a developer or don't understand JSON initially, because modern tools, AI tools, let you ask for simple JSON structures like this. I use ChatGPT and other tools all the time because I'm not a developer to get structures and organize the information so that it can be sent over. So you don't have to be a developer, but you can learn how to do this quite easily. So this is what we're sending over as part of the request. We're going to send out over the contact ID, and this is the unique identifier that we're going to use to update the contact record. And then we're also sending the email address. This is what we're actually going to use to perform the lookup inside of Clay. All right, before I continue, are there any questions? Just give it a pause here. Okay, I don't see any questions. Let's move on. So let's go back over to Eloqua, and I'm going to take this record and I am going to move it over to the enrichment step. And now in this flow here, you can see that I've got a filter for contacts needing enrichment. That's what we would like to do here in this particular flow if we've already enriched the contact. And I've set up my filter so that it has the rules, about which fields I want to make sure I have. And if I don't have them, I'm going to flow them down here. That's how we set up ours. But of course, if you want to always update with the latest information, you could skip the filter step and just send it right over. And it's going to move the member. Close that. And you can see here it's run. And then let's go over to Clay and take a look at what happened. All right. So here's the new record coming over. Let me show you how it looks inside of Clay. So this is how you configure the webhook. You can see here's the URL, and that's where I copied from over into Eloqua and configured the webhook for the post URL. And that's all you need to put there. Everything else is pretty simple. We're going to be using JSON. And then if we look at the actual request that came over, I've clicked here, and now I'm looking at the cell details, and we have the information. Here's the contact ID, the long form version of it, and then the email address that came over. I have a formula here that is going to extract just the text the numbers from the contact ID, because that's how the API will want to receive it. It'll want a number, not a string. And then we have the input information, which is the email address. And this is where the magic is inside of Clay. So I'm going to expand this out so you can see that there are multiple providers that are looking for this. And fortunately for Mark, we found him using the first one. But let me go into the details here so you can see how this is configured. So I've got my waterfall here, and this is a enriched contact waterfall. And there's these different providers here. I can move these around according to priority so that I use those that we've observed over time, have had the best results. And then it's going to check this first one. If it gets a result, it's going to end. If not, it'll go to the next one and so forth. It's going to use the work email. And that's how that runs. So we can see here that this has run and Mark's full name has been returned. This is actually what the provider sent back to us in terms of information about Mark. So here's his full LinkedIn URL, his full name, his title. There's a bunch of information about him from there. There's just a ton of information that could potentially be useful for you in your segmentation and targeting. So you can use as many of these fields as you would like to push over to Eloqua. So I've got these two fields that we're going to push over, the title and the LinkedIn ID, and let me show you how that is done. Oh, I just forgot to mention that I do also have a column for the results of the valid email because we don't want to push over contacts that aren't valid. All right, I will show you how we sent the information over. So I have created a connection to Eloqua using the Eloqua API. Behind the scenes, this is sending this over as headers. We're going to use a put because that's the method for updating an existing record. This is the API URL, the endpoint for this particular action we're going to take. And then here's the structure that we're going to send over in JSON. And yes, I did use ChatGPT to make sure that this was accurate and get it formatted properly. So here's the structure, the different fields that we're going to send over, and then this is how you embed the information inside of the body and send it over. We're going to send it over as application JSON. And I have a rule down here at the bottom that I'm only going to run this if the column for verified email is checked. So if it goes through all the workflows and it gets through all of those and it's unable to verify, if it finds one and can't verify the email, it's going to keep going. And ultimately, if it can't verify an email for any of the sources, then it's not going to send this back over to Eloqua. All right, let me go back here. And then if I click on the actual code here, this is the response back from Eloqua. So it responded with information here, even said he's not a bounce back and he is subscribed. And this current status in the workflow over in Eloqua is awaiting action. So let me go back over to Eloqua and let's take a look at Mark's record. I know this is kind of a, oops, need to refresh this because he's moved. As you can see here, here's Mark's record and that has been updated. So I know this is kind of a simplistic demonstration of, a capability, taking some fields, sending over to a service, getting it back and getting some columns back. But, if you're looking for a different kind of provider, or you are thinking about using a provider that has an API but doesn't have an Eloqua integration, you can certainly do these things today. So that's the reason why we wanted to show this particular example today. Are there any questions with what I have done so far? Any questions either about how I've configured it or how it works with Clay. I'll just
Yeah.
pause here for a second.
And just as a reminder, please use the Q&A option for any of those questions, just so we can keep everything organized.
All right, let's move to our account enrichment use case. So we're actually going to look at a previously run integration for this use case, just because it was easier for me to make sure I wasn't showing data in this example, because I was able to carefully control it. So the reason why we need to use n8n in this particular case is that Clay has an interface for uploading files, but you have to use their user interface. If you want to upload a file via the API, you have to break it up into individual records and send them over as a HTTP request. So this is how this flow works. This was on a schedule, so this one will run, just to show you, this will run every day. I'm clicking into the details so you can see that. And then I have a request here that's going to go make a call to the data export that I've configured over in Eloqua. This runs every day. It gets all the deltas for all the accounts in the system, and then I'm able to obtain that CSV file from it. So all I have to do is hit this URL and authenticate, of course, and I get the data back. So here's, you can see the data that I received back from the system over here on the right-hand side. The next thing I'm going to do, and this has got a little bit more sophisticated work here, I need to turn this CSV file into some JSON objects that I can actually process and send through the API. So once again, I used ChatGPT to convert. I said, here's my data source, and this is what I want my output to be. And this is the result of that, some JavaScript that looks through all of these. It does some trimming, does some cleanup. As I noticed, some of the data had some problems with it, but here's the output example that I've got here. And you can see it's for Forethought Marketing and our information. So that's the output. If there were multiple rows here, so if you had many accounts that were updated, there would be multiple objects here. And this number here would tell you exactly how many. And then the last part of this is just a loop that goes around the number of records that you want to process. So we have one here, so there's only going to be one loop. If there were 1,000 records, and I've done things with 1,000 plus records quite easily, it will cycle through these automatically. The actual post over to Clay looks like, oops, gotta make sure we got, okay, so there's my data. And again, there's a webhook over into Clay. And I'm sending it over, I'm setting the body. And in this case, I have specified the fields inside of n8n so that I can send over these companies' fields. And how I did this is I just dragged and dropped these over here. And I was able to put those in, and here is the response from Eloqua. And if I go over into Clay, this is what was received. So here's my webhook. You can see, here's the information I received over. And then another company ID, like a contact ID, it's the unique identifier. Give me the website, and then it enriched the company and had these columns here for size and industry. These are the ones I cared about for this particular example. And then once again, like we did for accounts, this is how we sent the information over. All right, so that is everything. Let me pause again for questions to see if we have any. Okay, Al, it doesn't look like we have any.
All right. Well, thank you, Richard. And just, I know we've said this a couple times, but as a reminder, please use that Q&A option to ask questions. I did see one question that popped in related to how the data from these two platforms um, different and efficient from other tools available in the market. Maybe you can address that, Richard.
Yeah, so I mentioned this briefly at the beginning that the different providers that you might get might have a single source of information. So they will be, experts in maybe North America or experts in Europe. The advantage that Clay has over some of these other solutions, if you're considering something and you don't have one, Clay allows you to have multiple sources, and in the waterfall, you're able to um, select through several of those. Maybe you need a combination too of different providers because some providers may not provide the specific attribute that you're looking for. And so using multiple providers is a way for you to make sure you have all the data to pull over.
Great. Thanks, Richard. And then final call for questions. If and any question is a good question. So if you have a question, please post it and we'll get it addressed.